Welcome back, everybody, to Talk of the Now podcast with Gene. And tonight I've got Jason. Howdy, Jason.
Hello.
And to Jason's surprise, I have brought back on another old friend of ours, Keith. What's up, Keith?
How's it going?
It's local up in here.
Jason said something, but I didn't hear it.
It just got real local up in here.
Local up
That's
in
right.
here.
That's
Yeah.
right.
This is like Mo, Larry, and Curly. Or Shemp, I don't know. Maybe if we had your friend Evan on, he could be Shemp. I don't know.
Oh Lord, I don't think we'd have to have. No, people couldn't handle that.
No, that'd be too much.
That would be too much.
Who was your favorite watching? I mean, mine was always Curly. I always thought he was hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know. Niagara Falls. Slowly I turn, step by step.
Well, Keith is new to the podcast here.
It's a new
Podcast
process
nation
for
of
preserving
Talk
food.
of the Now.
Yes.
Keith,
Talk of the now.
Keith, we had you on last time,
Yeah.
talking about your yourself and your adventures, and I told you that we'd have Jason on. Jason, what we talked about last time was the old neighborhood, which Keith was telling us about
Scottdale.
Scottdale.
Did I say Stockdale? I thought I said Scottdale.
It's a syndrome. It's okay.
Phoenix,
all right.
Georgia.
Yeah.
And so why don't maybe you can start us off and give us some of your memories of the old Scottdale, Georgia, Jason, and what your dad, what some of his experiences were. Keith kind of gave us a lot of his dad's experience and his family lineage there last time.
Well, just next to Decatur, Georgia is yes, not far from Decatur. If anybody's familiar with the Atlanta metro area, is a tiny little mill village called Scottdale. There used to be a cotton mill. They should have left the mill building up because they could have made it into really cool loft apartments, but that was before they were doing that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, my dad's memories, were, kind of similar to Keith's dad's memories back in the day because they all grew up together. Now, dad was from the poorer side of things, as you could say. And, he had kind of a bit of a, I want to say, troubled childhood just with parents and things like that. So, his memories are of the old church and his friends. Those are his memories, because the other stuff he rose above and got out of the impoverished kind of lifestyle. More of a, like they used to say, you owe your soul to the company store. That kind of impoverished kind of life,
Yeah, Keith talked about that last time.
Yeah, it was back in the old days. They used to do it at coal mining towns too, where there's a company store. You use company credits to get company stuff, and it's like, if you ever want to move away, you've got to come up with your own money that ain't from the company. But yeah, Dad was more. It was all kinds of things that united those guys. Harken back to probably the story that everybody that was raised in our church and remembers is Reverend Kennedy Smart, one of the founders of the Presbyterian Church of America back in the day, but also one of the good old moving van chaser pastors. He would see people moving into the mill village and say, "Hey, just endearing as you can, just your southern charm," he would put on, and he would say, that's the church over there. I'm the pastor. Church starts at this time on Sunday and Sunday school. And just, he was so endearing. He gave
there.
Yeah. He got people to come just because of his nature, and, helped, him and, my dad credited him basically with, Dad thinks saving his life ultimately. Dad doesn't know where he would be.
But leading him to the church in Christ, basically.
Right, exactly. Obviously saving his life in that way, but also literally like keeping him from, whatever he could have been. Dad was always more motivated, I should say, than a lot of people in that side of things. But anyway, it still took some doing on his part to get out of that situation, graduate from college and with an accounting degree and all that and get out of it. But he always credited Kennedy Smart for Preacher Smart, as we called him, to do that. I mean, he's still alive. He's in a nursing home. He's got to be like 90 something.
Just turned 99 this week.
Oh wow! So he's like Jimmy Carter's buddy.
Yeah.
Just phenomenal. Like, I hope
a better Bible teacher.
yeah, just a little bit. But
no offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my, my memories of that. I mean, my Aunt Barbara can tell more about it too. My dad's oldest sister. I mean, my dad died in 2002. And so, Keith and I both have that in common. Both of our dads died. And so we can kind of look back and reminisce and kind of think, oh, this is, kind of the whole idea that in my book, you stand on the shoulders of other men who came before you. You don't venerate those men as, put them on a pedestal by any means. But, those are the people that kind of paved our path. God used to pave the path for us to have the life that we were blessed to have and the community that we were blessed to have. And I'm going to get through it, Keith. You can get through it too. But
I didn't mean
anyway.
this to be a
no. I mean, but this is a celebration too, because it's when you talk about your past, it's like we are very fortunate, and I know this. I thank God for this every day that I was fortunate enough to be raised in that community of a bunch of other brothers and sisters and a bunch of other moms and dads that kind of, for lack of a better term, you could bounce life off of. That makes sense. Like they would circle the wagons when stuff. They would do things like that. That's the stuff I miss, but I also understand that, things are in your life for a time frame as far as tight, knit communities go. But that was kind of one of the memories. I mean, other than funny stories I used to hear about Tommy Burdett and Rodney Dorton, Keith's uncle.
So your dad, Jason, where did he go to college?
My dad went to Georgia State.
Georgia State.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm hearing y'all right. The town was sort of like the post side of town, basically. The that area, because you were saying he had to get out of it.
Yeah, well, Dad's situation was unique. Dad, unfortunately, had an abusive father, and a mom who, bless her heart, was just pitiful and just never got above a certain level of education.
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of that's what I mean when we talk about rising up, getting out of that situation. There's I don't really want to go into a lot of the stuff that
you don't have to do that. But I just mean, getting out of like a situation that's rising above the situation. Not that it was like a getting out of a like a projects type situation, but it's kind of like getting above a poor side of town situation is kind of what I mean.
Right. Like I mean, that's kind of what it is. Yeah. Making a life for yourself that's outside the mill. To the point where my dad, I remember. Go ahead.
I was going to say that was the interesting part was there was the poor side and there was the poorer side. I mean, it was
right.
Like you had like Avondale Estates was literally on the other side of the tracks, and just like in another, like less than a mile away. And that was a very well-off community.
I was about to say Avondale Estates was
it's still
really nice.
It still is a really nice community.
Yeah. And so then coming back this way toward the Mill Village, where you would pass by the church, to the far side of the church on the opposite direction from the Mill Village, that was the even poorer side. And then you had the Mill Village itself. So it was like there was the the well-off people in Avondale Estates. Then you go across the tracks to get to the poor side, the Mill Village, and the poorer side. Like across. So it was like, it's like different levels of, not doing so great.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, any town that can come up with the 5-star establishment of the Waffle House, Avondale Estates, has to be a great, pretty prestigious.
That is true. Yeah, it's funny to think about that. Oh, we're happy to have you listening, and please like and subscribe. Anyway.
That's right.
But yeah, he just totally different. It's so funny though, because my dad just grew up in such a different way than yours, because he had he just came from his dad wasn't really a farmer. His dad was a guy that had a job he grew up in DeKalb. I told Jason about that before. But then his dad moved them to Gwinnett County back when it was like moving to the sticks. And
wow.
Him growing up out there was basically finding odd jobs. And I think my grandpa eventually ended up installing pipelines, septic tanks, things like that.
No kidding.
And my dad wasn't ready to go into the family business, so he decided he wanted to work on cars for the rest of his life. So that's how he ended up where he was.
Was it Doraville where they grew up?
Yeah, for the most part. And
oh wow, okay.
Which is a funny thing, because apparently your parents, your moms could probably verify this now, but the dad's thing was Doraville was the place to be. Like if you lived where he lived in Gwinnett, I'm sure Norcross too. Doraville had the Dairy Queen. They had the Strip. They had places where people would go to hang out, see girls, lay drag with your car.
Amen.
Do all kinds of American graffiti mischief on a Friday night, basically.
Both of y'all are Mr. Music Men over here, but y'all can verify for me, wasn't it the Georgia Satellites that sang around Doraville?
Atlanta Rhythm Section.
I knew I was going to get it wrong.
Touching country in the city. Yep.
Right. Oh, there you go. That's why the song's there. It's exactly what you're explaining,
Not to be confused with States Rural Blues, which was, the Allman Brothers. Anyway,
right. You're right.
But my dad had so many stories of hanging out in Doraville. If you were going to go find the crowd, that's where it was. And we've talked about American graffiti. He can verify. Yep. That's kind of what it was like. You see people just goofing off and doing stupid things. That's what teenagers were doing.
Probably on Buford Highway. I mean,
yeah, probably. That's the main drag through there.
Yep. I think I doubt that Dairy Queen's still there anymore. Maybe.
Yeah, well, there is a Dairy Queen somewhere on that road, I'm sure. The Dairy Queen and Tucker used to be the place, right?
It's still there.
It's still there, yep.
Well,
Tucker, which is also the home of Applebee's. If anybody didn't know that was where the first Applebee's was. That one that was right there on Lawrenceville Highway was the first ever Applebee's.
And when I was a teenager in high school, for some reason, people loved to go to the Milk Jug in Tucker. I don't know what was so special about that place for teenage kids.
Because it was a drive-through convenience store. That's why.
Still there, too. That's what's crazy.
Like literally a drive-through convenience store. There's no other reason to go there just to say you've been to a drive-through convenience store. Who does? By the way, for I don't know how many years, my aunt ran a beauty salon, a hair salon, in that shopping center, and it was called the Hairport.
The Hairport. Very nice.
Nice.
Wow, the Milk Jug, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I remember going in high school with my brother, like, let's go over to the Milk Jug. Like, he was one of his buddies. Let's go over to the Milk Jug. I was like, what the heck? I'm like a ninth grader. And we go over there, and like, all the rednecks of that area were just hanging out over there, just basically standing around looking like Beavis and Butthead, trying to...
we all did that, though.
Probably hoping some cute girl would drive by. I don't know. But I just remember being over there thinking, yeah, we're cool, aren't we? Standing here. That and a place on 78 called Ken's Pizza. That was the big hangout.
I loved Ken's Pizza. Man, we used to drive out there to Ken's Pizza from DeKalb. So
Oh, you did?
Red cups. We were like, whoa.
That was birthday party pizza from my cousin Ben over there. That was good stuff right there.
Yeah, that's right. Because Ben and I were in the same. See, I'm of the weird nature. We actually moved to Gwinnett and then moved back to DeKalb in 1986 and lived there until 1995.
They did the reverse commute.
And moved back out to Gwinnett so Laurie could go to Parkview. So I actually wound up going to the same high school as my dad, Clarkston, and I got to kind of have like my own Clarkston experience, that was connected but not really to my dad. It was like it's all of us, and it was my old church. It was Clarkston Baptist who had the youth group, and we would all hang out, and we adopted people like Keith, into our tribe,
into your fold,
because and other people, and it was just, and we would do the same thing. We would sit in the parking lot behind Clarkston Baptist Church and just sit there going, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know what you want to do, for hours. I think, and it's just like to the point where when my friend Evan came up from Warner Robins, who was also around that time, he came up and we recreated that whole, I don't know, what do you want to do, in the parking lot, the same parking lot behind the church that's no longer there.
I'll give y'all a story from my high school days. It was funny. I was like, it's kind of funny, but not really. But the Ken's Pizza thing you mentioned, I remember being like a 10th grader, and this buddy of mine named Tal Garner, he was a senior that year. And, I had nothing to do on a Friday night one time. And for some reason, after a football game, I saw Tal, and I was like, because his dad knew my dad. And I was like, hey, Tal, what's happening? He's like, oh, nothing much, man. You want to ride with me over to Ken's Pizza? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll ride with you. And he had I think he had a Camaro or something like that, V8 Camaro. It was like a 1980s like IROC Camaro or something like that. Anyway, I think we're a statute of limitations here. But all I remember is going down Rockbridge Road, I think it was, or Garner Road, and I looked over at one point, he was doing 120 or so. And
Garner
like,
Garner would have been a good one to do it on.
Deer doesn't run out in front of us. And so we got over there and, just hanging out, and I was like, wow, I'm really cool. I'm hanging out with a senior dude. We're checking the place out. This is cool. And then they left to give me a ride home. And
yeah, I mean, I remember going out to Ken's Pizza. I mean, Ken's Pizza was a cool place. It had the pictures of Stone Mountain being built on the wall, and then little makeshift scaffoldings to frame the pictures of like what they would hang on. It was just a quirky little place, but it was just, I don't know, it was just really cool. And I think they stole their cups from Pizza Hut because they were that same red plastic cup. Everybody in the listening to us knows that cup.
Oh yeah. I had a second cousin that's one of my dad's first cousins, and we would always go to their house on Friday nights, and he would order Ken's Pizza like delivered, I guess, and it would come in at like 9:30 at night, and it would always have all the vegetables on it. And I just remember picking those vegetables off.
Don't need that crap.
Yeah.
No. But it, that, and there's, I remember even famous for changing our plans in high school. At the drop of a hat while we were driving around. This was before cell phones were affordable. They were around in various states of gigantic form. And so we would go to places and be like, crap, we don't want to go here. So we had to wait until people showed up. Or if you were lucky, sometimes you caught the people in transit as they were leaving the parking lot, say, hey, where are we going? Oh, we're going to go here. And then somebody's yelling out the window. Like, that's how you knew. There was no cell phone, and then we got the right idea to piece together old CBs, and put them in our cars. I remember that. So we all have handles, some of which we still use today, names and things. And, I remember that one of the funniest stories is somehow we wound up at the Milam Park pool parking lot one time. And I'm not sure if you were there or not, Keith, but I know some of the girls that, were famous for changing their minds were there. And I remember Ryan Hendricks was in the back seat, crammed in there with everybody because he's a tall guy. And Evan Thomas was in the back seat. And I'm pulling in my hot rod car that I had, the Omega, the end of all cars. And I had an 83 Oldsmobile Omega that was light blue with blue interior.
Nice.
Velour interior too.
I had a cousin that had a Bonneville.
Hold all the smells. Anyway, so I pulled in there and I'm driving down there. I went to the back of this parking lot where there was like a pavilion at the back, and I'm about to get out of my car and they're driving off, and I just remember, and this is, it still cracks me up. The window in the back rolls down. Evan sticks out his, big old white face and goes, "These plans are subject to change," and just rolls the window back up. You could tell Evan was getting frustrated with the girls in the car. Little things like that. I mean, there were challenges growing up, but we had a really cool, I think Keith and I have talked about this many times, very multicultural area. Now it's really multicultural now. But even back then, we had the benefit of growing up in a place where you were friends with everybody.
Yes, happy memories, Jason. Happy memories.
You have little things like that, but that's what I'm saying. Like you're all together though. We all I don't know. It was a very tight knit community. Even with the people that didn't go to church with us, didn't do, it was still people. So there's all those connections from back in the day, and it was just kind of cool to be having all these memories around where our parents grew up. At least
that's interesting.
Dad's side of the family grew up for me. Mom grew up downtown Atlanta. So, just that whole, just the reality of that when it sits in whoa, I had all these memories in the same place Dad had his high school memory. It's just crazy, Anyway.
That's definitely different than what I grew up with my high school community. It was a lot of very cliquish, a lot of your popular crowd and your sports crowd and your theater crowd and your band crowd. It was almost very siloed out as far as the different groups that went to my high school.
Gene, how big was your graduating class?
Oh gosh, I think we were just under 500. Not nearly as big as they are nowadays. I think they're a lot bigger nowadays.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with it because like Jason and I graduated each with, I think, less than 200.
No, we were right around, I was around 300, I think. I had 300 in our graduating class. We were the big ones.
Y'all were, because we were like 100.
Class of 94 was huge. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like 180. So, I mean, I do think that has something to do with it, because I think the bigger the school gets, the less likely you have people overlapping in different activities, so they're less likely to see each other in different arenas and be friends just because they're around each other all the time. When you have schools that are as big as they are, I think that leads to cliques and groups, because
it does.
People focus. It's natural, because people and plus they spend more time with that particular group, so then they kind of leave behind other friendships, and that's fine. But I think that was the benefit of having a smaller school and a smaller classes. I mean, Jason, we couldn't help but know everybody.
I mean, it's true, and it was kind of good. It forced you to kind of relate to people that were different than you. Another cool, great memory is
not a cold one. Sorry,
no, not cold. We had also the pleasure of being in a very musical setting too, where we were at in Clarkston. Our chorus, there had people that invested a lot of time in us. There are a lot of teachers there that invested a lot of time, but I remember, Pam Cook just calling you out. It's hard to call her Pam. This is Cook. Anyway, but it was this whole thing. We were the top, I think, as far as performing arts go in the county, in that area. Whereas Avondale High School was supposed to be the performing arts school, but our chorus wound up kind of being our drama, even though we did have a drama department, but we kind of meshed into being our own thing. And, we just had a whole lot. We had dessert theater every spring, right? Button up to kind of near the end of school was dessert theater. And it was this, lack of a better term, variety show. And we would have our own dialogue that we wrote in between. And if I could I've got to find some of these tapes and get them digitized, because they're amazing. And we do excerpts from Broadway musicals. We do regular rock songs, dance numbers. We had a lady, Lisa, who was our dance person that Pam Cook knew, and she used to dance on Broadway, and she would whip you into shape. But we also had the distinct pleasure of walking around New York City with Lisa, a bunch of us who went for the Georgia Youth Chorale in 1992 to sing at Carnegie Hall in New York with 700 kids from
actually all over
North Georgia, yeah. And so that's a big memory, getting to walk like right up to the World Trade Center, getting to see all of New York, getting to eat a gyro that was bigger than my head, which is saying something, and then going to Mama Leone's to eat. I mean, seeing the Secret Garden on Broadway. I mean, just this crazy whirlwind trip. We had a big chorus yard sale to pay for it. I sold my Rob Roscop skateboard that I should have kept. And then I could buy a nice used car with that now. But anyway, you just the little things that stick out. I mean, that was just like once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, who is a teenager would get to go to get a paid trip to somewhere, and it was my first time on an airplane. I can't remember, was it? Yeah, it was Keith's first time. We sat next to each other. There's a picture I got of Keith in the seat next to me. And we were up there with our friends with I know he doesn't listen to this podcast, but he should. Billy Harley and Matt Duncan, all these people, like these cool people that we all grew up with, and we all had this experience together. We had this
is like the shout out episode for Jason.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, shout out. Somebody else telling you got shout out, and then start listening to our podcast and like and stuff. So there we
go. Jason, based on what you told me with your background and your car that you had and your experiences, I'm beginning to understand why you like the movie Better Off Dead so much, because you are Blaine Meyer, aren't you?
I'm sorry, your mom blew up, Ricky. But yeah.
I mean, where's your black Camaro?
Oh man, we all dreamed of having that. We dreamed of our parents being able to afford something like that under a tarp in the front driveway. I mean,
back in the day, you might be able to get it for less than $5,000, but
I know, but it was a lot of money back then. Like I remember, I had a dream for a '66 Mustang for years. I went and looked at them. Stupid. I don't know why I went and looked at cars I couldn't afford. But just back then, you just like doing that. We got the old paper auto traders. In fact, that's the thing that got me in my weird predicament story that'll be for another as I went inside. But anyway, still have those in the box somewhere.
Okay, let me ask y'all this then. What is the lowest in your youth? Because hopefully you have much more than this now. When you looked at your checkbook, what was the when you finally got old enough to have a checkbook and you had money in the bank? What was the lowest amount your checkbook ever read on the balance?
Officer, I don't answer questions.
Yeah, it is either zero or negative because I overdrew.
Yep, me too.
I don't think I ever overdrew. I had $83 in there one time, and I thought that was pretty low.
I think
high roller.
Yeah, right. I think I did. I want to say I did one time in college. I learned my lesson.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I overdrew, but that was it. That was
me.
Yeah.
What was
your
first
last week? No, I'm kidding.
What was your first bank account? I mean, what was your first bank you had a bank account at? That's a teller of like how we are. No teller.
A teller. Right? I got you on that one.
Right there.
All right. Well, let me ask you this then. Did you give in? Because surely you had them at your football games. Did you give in to the credit card? Get a free T-shirt, get a credit card person as you walked into the stadium.
I did not.
It was not in the stadium. It was all over the quad. It was. Yeah. I mean, but it was a shirt I didn't have to wash. I mean, come on. I got smart after a while. I gave them fake information just to get the free stuff. But
Darius Rucker, here's your shirt.
Yeah, they're like, they were like, who is this guy? Who is this Robert Plant?
Ted Nugent here.
From Slap Out, Alabama.
That's right, from Slap Out. what was funny is they started to get really clever, and they had like the games and stuff that they would do. Like, I mean, they would set up on the quad at Troy like crazy. They'd have the big, sumo wrestler suit things, the Velcro wall with your Velcro suit that you go jump on and get stuck to. Then they had this really, really like beta version of like Guitar Hero thing where you had to play the strum it to the little beats. And I was sitting there just killing it on a song. And the guy's like, "Hey man, have you ever thought about?" I was like, he's like, "Well, you can get that new guitar if you." And I'm like, okay.
Hey man, is that guitar rock, man? Yeah, man, we'll turn it up, man.
But yeah, no, that's funny. Yeah, that I got it a couple times, but yeah,
it's actually, that's nice. You got a couple.
It's funny you mentioned that. Like for years, and I don't know if they still do it on the campus of of where I went to college, but
you went to Stanford, right?
Yeah, sure.
California.
We'll go with that. I refuse, alumni drives, and I refuse to send money to my university until I knew that they didn't allow those credit card companies on campus anymore.
Amen.
It was just, it got to be, because I saw a couple classmates just rack up ridiculous amounts of debt because they're away from home for the first time.
You can pay the minimum payment, man.
Right? I mean, you're told all the right things,
Yeah.
And
it's very interesting. Yeah. I remember going, I think I had a good buddy or something by that point, and we're going to that first game, and I saw him, and whoever it was, he was like, "Man, don't talk to them. You don't want to get that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I just kept walking. I was like, "I didn't really want a T-shirt anyway."
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Keith, but go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think later on, like I saw people do it, and I just thought, man, there's just something wrong about that. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I have a great, funny, embarrassing memory if y'all want to share any. Me and Jason have done this topic before, but Keith, I just had this memory. Had this roommate named Smith, Chris Smith, statute of limitations. He he was my roommate, and we called him Swampwise because he was from.
Oh, I was like, I don't want to know. Oh no,
he was from that town that's not Waycross, but the one that's on the coast over there, and
Brunswick.
No, south of there, just north of Jacksonville. I'm trying to remember the name of that little town.
St. Mary's.
St. Mary's. It's somewhere. What county is it? Is that Charlton County or something like that?
Charlton, Wade.
Yeah.
I
think it was Charlton. Same place where Champ Bailey was from.
Okay.
He was from the exact same town.
Was it Hinesville?
No, I think it. Yeah, no, I think it was
further south.
Yeah, further south, right there at the very tip of Georgia.
St. Mary's is the only one I can think of right off.
Yeah.
Other than the islands like Fernandina.
Yeah, right. He was from like Charlton County.
Okay.
I know he's from that county, and so everybody called him Swampwise, and he had the accent to go with it. I mean, he called South Carolina South Carolina.
Oh wow!
And anyway, I got stuck being his roommate my second year of college, and he was as red as they come. And my other roommate was from Dublin, Georgia, and the other one was from Waycross, Georgia, and they thought he was a redneck.
Dude,
and,
that's impressive.
Something. Saying something.
Now the guy from Dublin and Waycross, both highly intelligent dudes. One was an engineering major, and the other one was a construction major. So they were very smart guys.
Folkestone,
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Even
sorry,
sounds like the middle of nowhere. Wow.
Now that I think about it, that was one of his other nicknames, Folkestone. My roommate Kyle liked to call him Folkestone. He just did the crazy. I could give you stories about him, but he would do things like walk out of the bathroom butt naked, like into our living room. He would
statute of limitations.
Yeah. He would call me, he would like go over to the refrigerator and like pull my milk out and say, "Gene, can I have some milk?" as he's pouring, things like that. And a lot of guys at my school, they had this job where they would clean windows. There was a guy in our church that had a business, and he would hire out college students to clean windows for him, basically, like clean convenience stores and Walmarts and things like that. He probably had about 20 guys under his umbrella.
Wow.
He had a whole empire, and that was just kind of in the Christian circle that I was going through. All these guys did that. and Chris was one of the guys. I mean, he made really good money doing it. And I was a sophomore in college. He was a graduate student. He was like 24 or 25. So he felt like he's probably 25 actually. He felt like an old man.
Yeah.
And he kind of acted like one, frankly. But he, Chris would take me out on weekends to go work with him to clean windows. And so I remember this one trip. He had one of those old stupid wannabe Volkswagen vans that he bought for $700.
Oh yeah.
Or like one of those tiny minivans. Not even a minivan. It looked like an old Volkswagen van. And I went out with him on a Saturday one time, and we get to this one stop. It's in like the middle of nowhere, South Carolina. Like we'd already gone over the border from Statesboro, and this guy like ran through a stop sign, and he jumps out of the van and just wailing his arms at the guys. He come back. Just sitting there cracking up. Anyway, we go to this Burger King, and reminds me of a rap song from the 80s. But anyway, we go to this Burger King, and
I know that song. Anyway, go ahead.
Chris goes to get a burger, and all right, I gotta go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, and Chris kind of he's like, well, I gotta go too. So he goes over to the urinal, and there's a stall, and I open a stall, and this big old dude is sitting there reading a paper, and he just kind of does one of these shrieks back. Ah! And I look back over at Chris, and he's just dying laughing. And I just like,
oh my god.
I think we laughed for about 10 minutes. I mean, this was a Burger King like employee that was in there reading his paper, and he didn't have the stall locked for whatever reason.
Dude, gotta love
I was like, sorry. And, had to be there, but it was funny.
I went to college so close to like Panama City, Destin area where we could like make a last minute decision. You're like, let's go to Destin. Oh, let's go. Problem is we make that last minute decision at like 9:00 at night. And so, yeah, you're pumped going down there. Yeah, we're going to go to Destin, going to go eat the donut hole, going to get some stuff, right? And then the drive back, it's only a 2-hour drive, but all 4 of us drove at one point. One part of the trip was, one of the 4 of us drove. And it was and it was fighting sleep the whole time. That whole.
So you're like that scene in Swingers where they all want to go to Vegas.
You're so money you don't even know it, Gene.
That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. You just struck a nerve with Keith and I. That's like one of our that's an old favorite movie right there. To this day, if it's on, I'm watching it. But I did have a country roommate. I had a country roommate that was like 6'3", I don't know, like 300 pounds, something like that. Nick Tyree. I'm just going to go ahead and call him out. Nick Tyree, if you're listening, good for you.
Was his nickname Tiny?
No, okay. But man, that guy, he had a lyrical way with the English language, and that kind of, he was from outside of Birmingham, but man, he used to work for a big rig towing company when he wasn't at school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't need the truck. You can just go pick it up. So he would have all these, funny stories and stuff. You're like, man, I got to tell you, man, this guy, man, I went out there he done parked his airplane right on the interstate. I'm like, all right, you have a much more interesting story than my warehouse job. All right, thanks. And he was also the guy who's like, big old guy, country's all get out. Had to tell me every day, but on the day, I can't remember if it was Thursday or Friday night, whatever it was. Jason, make sure you come back. You got to set that VCR to record Dawson's Creek.
Dawson's Creek.
We got to watch Dawson. I mean, just the most like trendy, silly like show, and he loved it. And it's just the funniest thing to hear him say Dawson's Creek.
That's good stuff.
Anyway, we could do a whole podcast series for a year and still not touch on probably all of our funny college stories. Dumpster diving, Keith.
Yeah, well, in terms of embarrassing, I'm quite proud of the Krispy Kreme stories, but
that is kind of a neat thing.
Embarrassing would be a buddy of mine, one of my roommates worked for Chick-fil-A Birmingham in their marketing department.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, we got mascot gigs all the time for Chick-fil-A. All through, I think that was like sophomore through senior year, I think, or maybe I think it was. And so it was either mascot work or just handing out coupons at events around Birmingham. Football games. It could be an Alabama game at Legion Field or whatever. One year we did the SEC baseball tournament at Hoover Stadium over in Hoover, Alabama, over on the edge of Birmingham. And I think that's actually where they still hold the SEC baseball tournament every year. Anyway, we got to go work it doing mascot work. So, in a big event like that, we had both the cow and the chicken costume. And so I happened to be in the chicken costume this day. And so Doodle's the chicken. And in that costume, you've got the big yellow floppy feet and you've got yellow tights on.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the story writes itself. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh man, I'm telling you. And then you got the chicken body and the chicken head. So they my roommate Chris, he's like, dude, he said we're gonna get you on the on one of the dugouts for the 7th inning stretch, and you're gonna do the chicken dance. Because that's what Chris does for his good friends. And so sure enough, they usher me down there. I'm on top of the dugout and doing the chicken dance. I'm turned around looking at the audience. I'm getting cat calls from the Mississippi State baseball players. Like whistles, telling me I have nice legs. And so we get done with the chicken dance. And I turn around and try my best to summon the most masculine, deep voices possible. Go, shut up about the legs, And of course, then when I did that, they all just died. I mean, I could hear the entire dugout just rolling. They were just dying, laughing like, ha ha, he's got girl legs. It was fantastic. So that was my embarrassing story. So
that is good. Wow.
And it was I'll tell you what, mascot work. It was a lot of fun, and it was really, really weird too, because you'd walk around at an event for an hour or two in the costume, waving at people, making children cry, and then you'd take it off to switch out with somebody else, and then you'd walk around the same event as the helper to the mascot person. So now you're seeing all the same people that you saw. Yeah. But they don't know who you are, right? You're like, hey, and they're like, why are you talking to us? And I'm like, oh, that's right. You
don't remember me.
Yeah, you thought I was in that thing, and
right.
that was a weird experience. Is walking around in a mascot outfit, and then later walking around seeing the same exact people, and they
kind of like invisible.
I mean, literally, it was really, really weird. It was kind of cool, though.
I have one that's kind of an odd one related to a sporting event. I went with a guy I knew that got a little job in the journalism department as one of the photographers for the Tripolitan down there, and the Troy Messenger, for that matter. So he was taking pictures, and we went up to the Georgia-Auburn game at Jordan-Hare.
Oh.
So he got to be down on the field taking pictures. I had to stay up in the press box and just take stats and take stuff, But I got free food, which, in college, that's gold. I ate till I was about to throw up. I was like, I'm saving this up. I don't have to sell CDs. I don't have to go sell CDs to go eat. Wow, that's awesome. So I'm up there and I'm walking around, and I turn the corner and I hear a voice I kind of recognize. I look at it, it's Vince Dooley. I was like, look at that. Ah. I walk straight up to him and say, hey, Vince, how are you? And he's like, hey, can you hold this for a second? And gives me his drink and then walks away. That's it.
Wait, did you have street clothes on? I missed that. Or did you have
yes. Well, I had to have a suit, and I had to have to be in the press box, I had to have my only, blazer and my only tie that I had in college.
But did you look like you were staff? I was wondering if that's why he did that.
Yeah, probably. Okay. But I was just like, holy crap, it's Georgia royalty. It's Vince Dooley.
You're Vince Dooley.
I'm like, holy shit. Like maybe one day we'll get a national championship, and little did I know it was going to take a couple more decades. But
all right.
that also happened to be the game where Uga tried to bite
Yes.
the Auburn player in the end zone. They made that famous picture.
Iconic game, yeah.
Yeah. So no, there's I could have my own podcast about Jason's embarrassing stories or Jason's crazy stories.
That's an ongoing thing, Keith, that we have here. That Jason will start his own podcast one day, but it's the podcast that doesn't happen.
That's right. I'll take a cue from Gene and call it maybe next year. But I am on another podcast with my cousin's husband, actually, my cousin Tina's husband, Jim. So yeah, but yeah. So that, I mean, I think any of us that kind of grew up and grew up in the 80s, went to college or went to high school and college in the 90s, right on the edge of the whole digital stuff coming on. Again, we're thankful there was no social media, but we can sit here and talk and keep it alive just from our memories. And it's funny because you start to remember something different every time. You're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's very true.
My wife and I were just talking about it the other day. I can't remember how it came up in the conversation, but I think I was talking with our girls. We're just talking about how different generations have different labels and how ours, particularly like the three of us, and those that are within it's really in about like a 5 or 6 year range. They've now called us Zennials. Well, Jason, I think is.
No, we're actually. I think it's anybody up to 1980. Born is a Gen Xer. 60 to 80 is a Gen Xer, and then the ones after that are the like right on the edge. Like you kind of are. It's like, yeah.
Well, what has been put out there since I can't remember it was only like in the past like 2 or 3 years is a term called Zennials, and it's like people born like from about 78 to 83. So like we're on the very tail end of Gen X and at the very beginning of the millennials.
And, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And we're like we perfectly hit that gap where right in the very formative years in like that 15 to 20 range is when digital, like our world went from analog to digital.
Yeah,
like
CDs and
so much of it, right? From from phones to computers, internet, like all of that. Like, all of us that have some of us that still have Hotmail accounts, that Hotmail accounts are AOL accounts from like 1993, or 95, whatever. It's very interesting. Look it up sometime, the term Zennial. It's, I mean, like Ann and I, my wife and I, we've read about it, and I was like, that's
Jason's calling somebody right now.
Dial up, baby. Talked about, they're like all these different descriptions of what people in that time frame kind of went through and what their experiences are and kind of how they see the world. And Ann and I are like, yeah, that's kind of us, like right there, And it's interesting because then when you interact, like I was recently interacting with a distant, not distant, not too terribly, but like a third cousin, second cousin, I can't remember. Anyway, I didn't like. I thought in my mind he was closer to my age,
right?
But he's not. Like he's legit in his 50s, and like when we were talking about information, like his first instinct was to say, "Hey, can you give me the phone number for that place? Can you give me the address?" And I'm like,
right.
I'm like, Google,
yeah, really,
but for some people of that, I think it's early Gen X, people that were in the 60s, born in the 60s, that may not be their first instinct, is to go, oh, well, I can look that up myself. It's, hey, or because we were talking about places down here, he lives in Jersey, and like It was almost like he didn't know if he could find those numbers because he's in Jersey, I'm in Georgia, I just thought it was really interesting. And it finally clicked. Oh, different generation. Like, be patient with that. Like, don't be frustrated with it. Just embrace it. Embrace the fact that he just thinks differently,
Right.
Talking the other day, one of my buddies was talking about how when his dad was learning to be a plumber, the guy that trained him was born in the 1800s.
Very nice.
My buddy's in his 30s. His dad is in his 60s.
Right.
And his dad, in his 60s now, was trained by a guy that was born at the tail end of the 1800s.
Dang.
Yeah, that's like my granddaddy was born in 1912. So, it's crazy to think that.
Yeah.
I grew up really close to my grandfather that was born in 1920, and I can remember he wasn't a man of many words, as a lot of people were of that generation.
Right.
But he did talk some, and he would tell you like little things every now and then. And I remember asking him, I think probably around 20 years old, if he, because I was like, wait a minute, I did the math, and I was like, okay, you're born in 20. Grandpa, did you ever know anybody that was in the Civil War? And he was like, oh, yeah, I knew a lot of veterans that fought in the war. He just called it the war.
Golly.
Isn't that crazy? That my grandfather,
just the time span of people that you talked to that knew people that were in this event that is, it blows your mind.
And it's neat that you said he referred to them as veterans. Like, when I think of veterans now, I think of anybody from Vietnam forward.
Yep.
That's who I think of in my mind, especially like Desert Storm, War on Terror, whatever you want to call it. Man, for him to think, I knew some veterans. From the 1800s. Okay.
Yeah. Which meaning if he knew a few people that were, that had to been when he was a kid probably, but those people would have already been, at 18 at least, maybe as little as probably 14, I would think, in that time period.
Yeah, probably.
I'm sure 14-year-olds were fighting in the Civil War in 1865.
They were probably in their 70s.
Yeah, probably would that have been 70s during the 30s or 40s?
Maybe, or blows 40s, your mind.
Yeah.
Yes, 70s or 80s.
Yeah, that blows your mind though to think about that. Like, what?
Yeah.
Well, we got to round it out, y'all. Keith, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man, that was good stuff.
Had a little fireside chat apparently today. Right. Should have dimmed our lights, I guess, and got a big fire going. Next time, though, Keith, I was going to do that this episode, but since I let it just kind of go where it wanted to go with the podcast,
we just went with it, baby.
I want to have you on, if not the next one, sometime soon, and we're going to talk about what you're doing with your school.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely. We're going to talk about the trades industry and how more people need to get into it. And speaking of generations, how they need to get into it more often. Yeah. And what the future of it is going to look like. We touched on it when you came on the first episode, but
Well, hopefully by then I'll have some really, really good news about it. That's in the pipe right now, so to speak. But
you need to contact Mike Rowe and get him to sponsor your school there.
Oh, well, we kind of our first announcement that we were going to exist, I tagged him on social media. So I think I'm sure he gets tagged by everybody.
But I'm sure he does. Yeah.
That's one of those things. We'll probably reach back out once we a little bit more established, stuff. But yeah, there's a couple things that, Lord willing, if a couple things come together here in the next week or two, we could have some really, really good news about school. So, yep.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Keith, Jason, as usual. And
appreciate
thanks
it, man.
everybody.
Yep.
Thanks.
See y'all.